Maya Rodriguez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she checked the clock on the restaurant wall. 2:47 p.m. Just 3 hours until her second shift started, and her feet were already screaming for mercy. She had been working at Romano's for 2 years now, and every day felt like a marathon. The fancy Italian restaurant sat right in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, where men in $1,000 suits made deals over $100 steaks. Maya often wondered what it would feel like to sit on the other side of those white tablecloths, to order without checking prices, to tip without calculating if she could still pay rent. Maya, "Table 7 needs more bread," called out Tony, the head waiter. Tony had been at Romano's for 15 years and knew every regular customer by name. He was like a father figure to Maya, always making sure she got the better tables and protecting her from difficult customers when he could. Maya grabbed a fresh basket of warm focaccia and walked over to table 7. The couple there barely looked up from their phones as she placed the bread down. She had learned not to take it personally. In a place like this, waitresses were often invisible until something went wrong. Back in the kitchen, she checked her phone quickly. 3 missed calls from the hospital billing department. Her stomach dropped. Her mother's cancer treatment was getting more expensive each month, and the insurance company kept finding new ways to deny coverage. The latest round of chemotherapy had cost them $12,000 out of pocket. "You okay, kid?" asked Roberto, the head chef. He was a big man with gentle eyes who always made sure Maya ate something during her breaks. He had seen her checking her phone with that worried look too many times. "Yeah, just family stuff," Maya replied, forcing a smile. She had learned to keep her problems to herself. Everyone had their own struggles, and complaining wouldn't help anyone. Roberto handed her a small container of pasta. "Take this home to your mom. Tell her it's my special recipe for getting better fast." Maya's eyes filled with tears. Small kindnesses like this kept her going when everything else felt impossible. "Thank you, Roberto. Really." The afternoon rush began around 4 p.m. Wall Street executives poured in for late lunches and early dinners, their phones constantly buzzing with important calls about important deals. Maya moved between tables like a dancer, balancing multiple plates on her arms and remembering every special request. At table 12, a young businessman complained that his salmon was too salty. Maya apologized and had it replaced, even though she knew the salmon was perfect. The customer left a 5% tip and made a comment about better service next time. Maya smiled and thanked him anyway. By 6 p.m., her lower back was aching, and her feet felt like they were on fire. But she kept going because she had to. Every table meant a few more dollars toward her mother's treatment. Every smile, even when her heart was breaking, was an investment in keeping her family afloat. Then Tony approached her with news that made her stomach flip with both excitement and terror. "Maya, we got a call today. Some big-shot tech guy wants to rent out the entire restaurant tomorrow night for a private party. The whole place, just for his people." Tony's eyes were bright with excitement. "Owner says we'll all get triple pay for the night, plus whatever tips they leave." Maya's heart started racing. Triple pay would be nearly $800, more than she usually made in a week. Plus tips from wealthy tech executives could be huge. This could be the break she desperately needed. "Who is it?" she asked, already mentally calculating how much this could help with the hospital bills. "Guy named Harrison Blackwood. Ever heard of him?" Maya shook her head. She didn't follow tech news or business gossip. She was too busy working to pay attention to celebrity billionaires. Well, he's loaded. Like crazy loaded. Started some app company when he was in college and sold it for billions. Now he invests in other companies and throws fancy parties. Tony leaned in closer. "Word is he tips big, but he's also particular. Likes everything perfect." "Particular how?" Maya asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Tony shrugged. "Just heard he can be demanding." "But hey, demanding rich people tip better than easygoing broke people, right?" That evening, Maya took the subway home to her tiny apartment in Queens. She shared the one-bedroom place with her mother, sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room. It wasn't much, but it was home. Her mother, Carmen, was lying on the couch watching a Spanish soap opera when Maya walked in. The chemotherapy had taken most of her hair, but she still insisted on wearing lipstick and earrings every day. "You have to keep your dignity," she always said. "How was work, mija?" Carmen asked, pausing the show. "Good news, Mom. Tomorrow night I'm working a private party. Rich tech guy rented out the whole restaurant. I might make enough to catch up on some of those bills." Carmen's face lit up. "That's wonderful, see? God provides when we need it most." Maya sat down next to her mother and handed her Roberto's pasta. "The chef made this for you. He says it's his special healing recipe." As they ate dinner together, Maya felt a mix of hope and anxiety about tomorrow night. She had no idea that Harrison Blackwood was known in certain circles for more than just his business success. She didn't know about the viral videos of him berating service workers, or the stories former employees told about his cruel sense of humor. All she knew was that tomorrow night could change everything for her family. She went to bed that night, dreaming of paying off hospital bills and maybe, just maybe, having enough left over to finally fix the leak in their bathroom ceiling. Maya set 3 alarms for the next day. She ironed her uniform twice, polished her shoes until they gleamed, and practiced her most professional smile in the mirror. She even watched a few YouTube videos about serving etiquette, determined to be perfect. At Romano's, the entire staff was buzzing with nervous energy. The owner had brought in extra flowers, polished every surface, and reminded everyone at least 5 times that this was their biggest night of the year. One mistake could cost them the contract for future events. "Remember," the owner announced during the pre-shift meeting, "these are very important people. Smile, be polite, anticipate their needs, and whatever happens, keep the customer happy." Maya nodded along with everyone else, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had no idea that in just a few hours her entire life would change forever. She couldn't imagine that the man who was about to walk through Romano's doors would try to humiliate her in front of dozens of people, or that his attempt would backfire in the most spectacular way possible. All she knew was that tonight, she had a chance to make enough money to help her mother get better, and she was ready to work harder than she had ever worked before to make that happen. The black limousines started arriving at Romano's at exactly 7 o'clock. Maya watched through the window as men and women in designer clothes stepped out onto the sidewalk, their jewelry catching the light from the restaurant's chandeliers. She had never seen so much wealth in one place. Harrison Blackwood was the last to arrive, and Maya knew it was him immediately. He moved like someone who owned every room he entered, his expensive suit perfectly tailored, and his silver watch probably worth more than Maya made in 5 years. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with the kind of confident smile that made people either love him or fear him. "Remember what we talked about?" Tony whispered to Maya as they watched the group settle into their tables. "Be extra careful tonight. These people can make or break this place." Maya nodded, smoothing down her uniform one more time. She had been assigned to serve the main table where Blackwood sat with his closest business partners. It was an honor, Tony had told her, because the owner trusted her to handle the most important guests. The evening started well enough. Maya moved gracefully between the tables, taking drink orders and explaining the menu items. The guests were polite, if distant, and several of them complimented the food. She began to relax, thinking maybe all the warnings about demanding rich people were overblown. Blackwood himself seemed charming at first. He made jokes that had his table laughing, told stories about his latest business deals, and even asked Maya about the wine selection. She found herself smiling genuinely as she poured his glass of expensive red wine. "You know," Blackwood said to his companions as Maya walked away, "I always enjoy coming to places like this. It reminds me where I came from, how far I've traveled." Maya didn't think much of the comment at the time. She was too busy managing her other tables and making sure everyone had what they needed. The tips were already looking promising, and she allowed herself to hope that this really would be the breakthrough night her family needed. Around 9 o'clock, things started to change. Maya noticed that Blackwood's voice was getting louder, his gestures more dramatic. He had switched from wine to whiskey, and his earlier charm was becoming something sharper, more cutting. "Did I tell you about my last trip to Tokyo?" he was saying to his table. "The service there is incredible. They actually care about doing things right, not like here in America where everyone thinks they deserve a trophy just for showing up." Maya felt a chill, but kept working. She had heard customers make comments like this before. Sometimes wealthy people like to complain about service as a way of showing off to their friends. She had learned to ignore it and focus on doing her job well, but Blackwood wasn't done. As the evening wore on, his comments became more pointed, more personal. He started making remarks about the quality of help these days, and how some people just don't understand what real service means. The other guests at his table looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Maya could feel their eyes on her as she worked, and she became more and more careful with every movement, every word. Then it happened. Maya was carrying a tray of champagne glasses to celebrate some business deal Blackwood had just announced. The tray was heavy, and she was moving carefully between the closely spaced tables. As she approached Blackwood's table, he suddenly pushed his chair back without warning right into her path. Maya tried to adjust, but there was nowhere to go. The edge of her tray caught his shoulder, and a few drops of champagne splashed onto his suit jacket. The entire restaurant went silent. Maya's heart stopped. She looked down at the tiny drops of liquid on Blackwood's expensive jacket, then up at his face. His expression had changed completely. The charming businessman was gone, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "I am so sorry, sir," Maya said quickly, reaching for her towel. "Let me clean that up right away. It's just a few drops. It won't stain." "Don't touch me," Blackwood said sharply, standing up. The entire restaurant was watching now. All conversation stopped. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Maya's face burned with embarrassment. "Sir, I'm really sorry. It was an accident." "I can pay for the cleaning." Blackwood laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Pay for the cleaning? This suit costs more than you make in a year. Do you think your little waitress salary is going to cover a custom Italian suit?" Maya felt tears starting to form, but she blinked them back. "Sir, please, I'm very sorry. It was an accident. The restaurant will take care of any cleaning costs." "An accident," Blackwood repeated, looking around at his guests with that cruel smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an accident. Our clumsy waitress here has had an accident all over my jacket." The other guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few of them looked like they wanted to say something, but nobody spoke up. Maya could see Tony across the room, his face tight with worry, but he couldn't intervene without making things worse. Blackwood wasn't finished. He was enjoying this now, feeding off the attention, the power he had over someone who couldn't fight back. "You know what?" he said, his voice carrying across the silent restaurant. "I think we need some entertainment tonight. Something to make up for this mishap." Maya didn't understand what he meant, but she felt a growing sense of dread. Blackwood walked over to the restaurant's beautiful grand piano that sat in the corner, a gorgeous instrument that was mostly decorative. He ran his hand along its polished surface, then turned back to Maya with that same cruel smile. "I bet someone like you has some hidden talents," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "All you people from your background? You must have some kind of musical ability, right? It's probably genetic or something." Maya's stomach dropped. She could feel every eye in the restaurant on her, could sense the mixture of pity and second-hand embarrassment from the other staff members. This was her worst nightmare coming true. "Sir, I don't think—" she started to say. "Oh, come on," Blackwood interrupted, gesturing toward the piano with theatrical flair. "Don't be modest. I'm sure you can bang out a tune or two. Consider it part of your service tonight." The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel her hands shaking. She looked around desperately, hoping someone would step in, would save her from this humiliation. But nobody moved. The other guests avoided eye contact. The restaurant staff watched helplessly from the kitchen doorway. Even Tony, who had always protected her, couldn't do anything without risking his own job. "Go on," Blackwood said, his voice taking on a commanding tone. "Play something. Anything. We're all dying to hear what passes for music in your world." Maya looked at the piano, then back at Blackwood's expectant face. She thought about her mother at home, waiting to hear how the big night went. She thought about the hospital bills and the rent money and all the reasons she needed this job. She also thought about something else, something she had buried deep inside herself for years, something that Blackwood, in his cruelty, had no idea he was about to unleash. Maya took a deep breath and walked toward the piano, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. Behind her, she could hear Blackwood chuckling with satisfaction, probably already planning how he would tell this story to his friends later. As she sat down at the piano bench, Maya's hands were trembling. The room was so quiet she could hear the tick of the antique clock on the wall. Every person in that restaurant was waiting to see her fail, to watch her stumble through some embarrassing attempt at playing. None of them knew what was about to happen. None of them could have guessed that Maya Rodriguez, the quiet waitress from Queens, was about to show them something that would change everything. Maya sat at the piano bench, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone in the restaurant could hear it. Her hands rested on her lap, still trembling from the humiliation Blackwood had just put her through. She could feel 50 pairs of eyes watching her, waiting for her to embarrass herself even more. Behind her, she heard Blackwood whisper something to his friends that made them chuckle. The sound cut through her like a knife. She had never felt so small, so powerless. Part of her wanted to just get up and run out of the restaurant. Job or no job. Maya looked down at the piano keys, and suddenly she was 8 years old again, sitting next to her father at their old upright piano in the Bronx. Before the medical bills, before he left, before everything fell apart, back when music was still magic. "Remember, mija," her father had told her, his gentle hands guiding her small fingers to the right keys. "The piano doesn't care if you're rich or poor, young or old. When you play from your heart, everyone listens the same way." She hadn't touched a piano in over 10 years. After her father left and they had to sell their piano to pay rent, Maya thought that part of her life was over forever. She convinced herself she had forgotten everything, that those years of lessons and practice and dreams were just childhood memories. But as she sat there, feeling the weight of the keys under her fingertips, something stirred inside her, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something stronger, something that had been waiting for this moment for years. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The first notes of Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor filled the restaurant like liquid gold. Maya's fingers moved across the keys with a precision that surprised even her. The muscle memory was still there, buried but not forgotten. The restaurant went from uncomfortable silence to stunned silence. This wasn't the amateur fumbling everyone expected. This was real music, played by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Blackwood's smug expression began to falter. He had expected embarrassment, maybe a few stumbling notes that would give him more material to mock. He hadn't expected this. Maya lost herself in the music. All the pain of the last few years, all the worry about her mother, all the exhaustion from working endless shifts, all the dreams she had buried deep inside herself. It all came pouring out through her fingertips. The melody started soft and melancholy, like a whispered secret. Maya's touch was so delicate that some people in the back of the restaurant leaned forward to hear better. But as the piece progressed, it grew stronger, more passionate. Tony stood frozen by the kitchen door, his mouth hanging open. In all his years at Romano's, he had never heard anyone play the decorative piano. He certainly never imagined that quiet Maya, who barely spoke above a whisper during shifts, could create music like this. Roberto peeked out from the kitchen, drawn by the incredible sound. Other staff members gathered behind him, all of them staring in amazement at their co-worker who had suddenly revealed herself to be something extraordinary. Maya's playing became more intense as she reached the dramatic middle section of the piece. Her whole body moved with the music, swaying slightly as her hands danced across the keys. Years of suppressed emotion came flooding out. Grief for her father who left, fear for her mother who was sick, anger at a world that seemed determined to keep her down. The guests at the tables sat mesmerized. These were people who regularly attended concerts at Lincoln Center, who owned season tickets to the Metropolitan Opera. They knew good music when they heard it, and this was far beyond good. This was extraordinary. One woman at table 6 had tears streaming down her face. She nudged her husband, whispering, "Do you hear this? Do you understand what we're witnessing?" A businessman at table 3 slowly pulled out his phone and began recording. He had never heard anything like this outside of Carnegie Hall, and he knew his wife, who taught music at Columbia, would never believe him without proof. Blackwood stood behind Maya, his earlier confidence completely gone. He looked around at his guests, all of whom were completely absorbed in the music, and realized that his plan to humiliate the waitress had backfired spectacularly. Maya finished the Chopin piece with a series of cascading notes that seemed to hang in the air like stars. But instead of stopping, she seamlessly transitioned into something else, an improvisation that blended classical technique with jazz harmonies, creating something entirely new and beautiful. This was the part of her musical ability that even her childhood teachers had found remarkable. Maya didn't just play music. She spoke it fluently, like a native language she had been born knowing. She could take any melody and transform it, make it her own, make it say things that words never could. The improvisation told a story without words. It spoke of struggle and hope, of dreams deferred but not destroyed. It talked about a young girl who used to believe she could change the world with music, and a woman who had almost forgotten that girl existed. As Maya played, something magical happened in that restaurant. The artificial barriers between the wealthy guests and the working staff seemed to dissolve. The music reminded everyone present of something they had lost or forgotten, the pure joy of experiencing something beautiful, something real. A tech executive who hadn't cried since his father's funeral found himself wiping his eyes. A fashion designer who usually only cared about appearances felt her heart opening in a way it hadn't in years. Even Blackwood's business partners, who had spent the evening listening to him boast about his latest acquisitions, realized they were witnessing something far more valuable than any deal or investment. Maya's hands moved across the keys with increasing passion and complexity. She played melodies that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her conscious mind, as if the music was pouring through her from some infinite source. She incorporated fragments of classical pieces she had learned as a child, bits of Mozart, Beethoven, Debussy, weaving them together with her own original themes. The result was a musical tapestry that was both familiar and completely unique. The restaurant's acoustics, designed more for conversation than performance, somehow made the music even more intimate. Every note reached every corner of the room, and every person felt like Maya was playing directly to them, speaking to their own private hopes and heartaches. As Maya built toward the climax of her improvisation, her playing became almost otherworldly. Her fingers flew across the keys with such speed and precision that it seemed impossible for human hands to move that way. Yet every note was perfect, every phrase meaningful. The emotional weight of the music was overwhelming. People who had come expecting a routine business dinner found themselves experiencing something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. This wasn't just a performance. It was a revelation. Tony realized he was crying and didn't care who saw. Roberto had his hand over his heart, completely overwhelmed by what his young colleague was creating. Even the busboys and dishwashers had gathered to listen, their own eyes wide with wonder. Maya began to bring her improvisation to a close, slowing the tempo and softening the dynamics. She played a final melody that was heartbreakingly beautiful, a lullaby her father used to play for her, transformed by her own pain and hope into something transcendent. The last note hung in the air for what felt like an eternity. Maya sat perfectly still, her hands resting on the keys, her eyes closed, completely drained but also completely alive. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the uncomfortable quiet of people waiting for embarrassment. This was the sacred silence that follows something profound, when an audience needs a moment to absorb what they've just experienced. And then, from somewhere in the back of the restaurant, came the sound of one person clapping. The first person to clap was Dr. Jennifer Kim, a music professor from Columbia University who had been dragged to the dinner by her tech entrepreneur husband. She had attended thousands of concerts in her lifetime, but she had never heard anything quite like what Maya had just played. Her applause started slow and deliberate, each clap echoing through the silent restaurant like a bell. Then her husband joined in. Then the couple at the next table. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted into the kind of thunderous applause usually reserved for Broadway opening nights or concert hall finales. People weren't just clapping. They were standing, some wiping tears from their eyes, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Maya opened her eyes, blinking in confusion. For a moment, she had forgotten where she was. Forgotten about the humiliation and the spilled champagne and Harrison Blackwood's cruel smile. The music had transported her somewhere else entirely, back to that place where she was just a girl who loved to play piano. But now reality came rushing back. She was still in her waitress uniform, still sitting at the piano she wasn't supposed to touch, still surrounded by people who had just witnessed her most vulnerable moment. She started to stand up, embarrassed by all the attention. "Don't you dare move!" called out Dr. Kim from across the restaurant. That was absolutely incredible. "Where did you study? Juilliard? Curtis?" Maya shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't study anywhere. I mean, I had lessons when I was little, but—" The applause continued, and Maya noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. At least a dozen people were holding up their phones, and the little red recording lights were blinking. They had been filming her performance. Among them was Alex Chen, a tech journalist with over 2 million followers on various social media platforms. Alex had come to the dinner reluctantly, expecting another boring evening of business talk and overpriced wine. But when Maya started playing, Alex immediately recognized that something special was happening and began live streaming the performance to his followers. "Guys, you are not going to believe what I'm witnessing right now," Alex had whispered to his phone during Maya's performance. "I'm at this business dinner in Manhattan, and this waitress just sat down at the piano, and I don't even have words for what she's doing. This is pure magic." His live stream had started with just a few hundred viewers, but as word spread through social media, more and more people tuned in. By the time Maya finished playing, over 50,000 people were watching live. The comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read them. "OMG, who is she? This gave me chills. I'm literally crying right now. How is she not famous already? That businessman trying to embarrass her just made the biggest mistake of his life. Alex wasn't the only one recording." Isabella Martinez, a freelance photographer who had been hired to document the business dinner, had captured the entire sequence of events, from Blackwood's cruel setup to Maya's transcendent performance. She knew immediately that these photos would be some of the most important of her career. The applause finally died down, but nobody sat down. The entire restaurant remained standing, as if they all understood they had just witnessed something historic. Harrison Blackwood stood frozen behind Maya, his face a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something that might have been shame. His plan to humiliate a working-class waitress had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. Instead of making himself look powerful, he had revealed himself to be cruel and small-minded in front of some of the most influential people in New York. I had no idea," he stammered, but his voice was lost in the continued murmur of amazement from his guests. Tony rushed over to Maya, his own eyes filled with tears. "Maya, sweetheart, in 15 years working here, I have never— Why didn't you ever tell us you could do that?" Maya looked around at all the faces staring at her with wonder and admiration. After years of being invisible, of being just another waitress serving other people's dreams, she suddenly felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "I used to play when I was younger," she said quietly. "But we had to sell our piano when things got difficult. I haven't played in years. I didn't even know if I still remembered how." Dr. Kim made her way over to Maya, practically glowing with excitement. "My dear, you didn't just remember how to play. What you did tonight was beyond technique, beyond training. That was pure artistry. That improvisation in the middle, I've never heard anything like it." Other guests began approaching Maya, introducing themselves, asking questions. The tech executive who had been recording pulled out his business card. "I don't know what your plans are, but my wife runs a concert series in the city. She needs to hear about you." Isabella, the photographer, showed Maya some of the images she had captured. "These photos tell an incredible story," she said. "Would you be okay if I shared them? I think the world needs to see this." Meanwhile, Alex's live stream was creating a firestorm on social media. People were sharing clips, tagging friends, creating their own posts about the mystery waitress pianist who had just blown everyone's minds. The hashtag Dr. Waitress Pianist was starting to trend. Back in Queens, Maya's mother Carmen was getting ready for bed when her phone started buzzing with notifications. She rarely got calls this late, and her heart jumped, worried it might be bad news about Maya's job. Instead, it was her neighbor Rosa, practically shouting into the phone. "Carmen, Carmen, turn on your computer! Your Maya is on the internet! She's playing piano and everyone is going crazy!" Carmen fumbled with her laptop, not really understanding what Rosa was talking about. But when she finally managed to find the video that Rosa had sent her, she burst into tears. There was her daughter, her beautiful Maya, playing piano like an angel, surrounded by people who were looking at her like she was a miracle. Back at Romano's, the evening had completely transformed. What had started as a routine business dinner had become something unprecedented. Guests were abandoning their tables to crowd around Maya, each wanting to tell her how moved they had been by her performance. But the most remarkable change was happening online. Alex's original live stream had been shared thousands of times. Other people who had recorded the performance were posting their own videos from different angles. Music blogs were picking up the story. News outlets were starting to call. Within 2 hours of Maya's performance, Dr. Waitress Pianist was trending nationwide. The video clips were being shared across every platform: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. People were calling it everything from "the most beautiful thing I've ever heard" to "proof that talent can be found anywhere." The story had everything that made content go viral: genuine emotion, unexpected talent, the triumph of an underdog, and a villain who got his comeuppance. But more than that, it had authenticity. In an age of manufactured content and artificial experiences, Maya's raw, honest performance touched something real in people. Major news networks started picking up the story. Entertainment blogs began trying to track down information about Maya. Music industry executives were making phone calls, trying to figure out who she was and how to contact her. Harrison Blackwood, realizing that his behavior was about to be scrutinized by millions of people, quietly slipped out of the restaurant with his closest associates. But it was too late. His cruel attempt to embarrass Maya had been captured from multiple angles, and the internet was not going to be kind to him. As the evening wound down, Maya found herself surrounded by business cards, phone numbers, and promises of opportunities she had never dreamed possible. But all she could think about was getting home to her mother, to tell her that maybe, just maybe, their luck was finally about to change. She had no idea that by morning, her life would be completely different. She couldn't imagine that within 24 hours, she would be getting calls from record labels, concert halls, and television producers from around the world. All she knew was that for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. The girl who had once believed music could change the world was still there, still alive, still capable of creating magic, and the whole world was about to find out. Maya woke up the next morning to the sound of her phone buzzing non-stop. She had turned it off before going to bed, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the previous night. But her mother's phone was ringing constantly from the living room, and Carmen's excited voice was getting louder with each call. "Mija! Maya, wake up! You need to see this!" Carmen called out, her voice filled with a joy Maya hadn't heard in months. Maya stumbled out of her bedroom, still in her pajamas, and found her mother sitting at their small kitchen table with her laptop open. Carmen's eyes were bright with tears of happiness, and she was practically bouncing in her chair despite her weakness from chemotherapy. "Look," Carmen said, pointing at the screen. "Look at all these people talking about you." Maya rubbed her eyes and looked at the laptop. Her mother had somehow found the trending hashtag Waitress Pianist, and the screen was filled with thousands of messages from people all over the world. Videos of her performance were everywhere, each with hundreds of thousands of views. "Mom, how did you find all this?" Maya asked, still not fully understanding what she was seeing. "Rosa's granddaughter showed me how to use the Twitter," Carmen said proudly. "She said you're famous now, mija. Famous all over the world." Maya's phone, which she had finally turned back on, immediately started buzzing with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, emails, hundreds of them. She scrolled through the caller list and saw names she didn't recognize, numbers from different area codes, and messages from people claiming to be from record companies and television shows. One voicemail made her sit down hard on the couch. It was from Dr. Patricia Williams, the Dean of Admissions at Juilliard School of Music. "Miss Rodriguez, this is Dr. Williams from Juilliard. I hope you don't mind me calling. We got your number from the restaurant. I've seen the videos of your performance last night, and I would very much like to speak with you about joining our program. We have full scholarships available for exceptional talent, and what you demonstrated last night is beyond exceptional. Please call me back at your earliest convenience." Maya played the message 3 times before she could believe it was real. Juilliard. The school she had dreamed about as a child, the place that seemed as impossible to reach as the moon. They were calling her, but that was just the beginning. Over the next few hours, Maya received calls from concert promoters, recording studio executives, talent agents, and music producers. A classical music label in Los Angeles wanted to fly her out for an audition. A concert hall in Chicago wanted to book her for a solo performance. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell her story. The most surprising call came from Antonio Rivera, a famous pianist who had won Grammy Awards and performed with orchestras around the world. Maya had listened to his recordings as a child, dreaming of someday playing with such skill and passion. "Maya," he said when she finally worked up the courage to call him back, "what you did last night reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. I haven't been that moved by a performance in years. I would be honored to mentor you, to help you develop your gift." Meanwhile, the story was growing beyond just the music world. Major news networks were covering it as a human interest story. "Waitress's hidden talent goes viral" was the headline on the morning news. "From serving tables to serving music," read another article. But the media attention brought something Maya hadn't expected: scrutiny of Harrison Blackwood's behavior. The videos clearly showed his attempt to humiliate her, and people on social media were not kind about it. Blackwood Bully started trending alongside Ra's Waitress pianist, and his business was facing a growing boycott. Maya felt conflicted about this. As angry as she had been about his cruelty, she didn't want to destroy anyone's life. But the internet had made its judgment, and there wasn't much she could do to stop it. By the afternoon, reporters were knocking on Maya's apartment door. She and her mother had to sneak out through the building's back exit just to get some groceries. The neighborhood was buzzing with excitement. Maya had become the most famous person ever to come from their corner of Queens. Mrs. Chen from the grocery store hugged Maya tightly when she saw her. "I always knew you were special, mija. I told everyone that Maya girl has something different about her. I'm so proud of you." The really overwhelming moment came when Maya checked her email and found a message from the children's hospital where her mother received treatment. Dr. Rodriguez, her mother's oncologist, had seen the viral videos and wanted Maya to know that the hospital staff had watched them together and cried. "Your mother talks about you all the time," the email read. "She's so proud of you, and now we understand why. Your music brought joy to a place that doesn't see enough joy. If you ever want to come play for our patients, they would be thrilled to meet you." But perhaps the most meaningful message came from someone Maya had never expected to hear from again. Her father, who had left when she was 12 and never kept in touch, had somehow found her through all the media coverage. "Maya," his message read, "I saw the videos online. I know I have no right to reach out after all these years, and I know I hurt you and your mother badly. But I wanted you to know that hearing you play brought back every good memory I have of teaching you piano. You've become everything I hoped you could be and more. Your music is a gift to the world. I'm sorry I wasn't there to see you grow into the incredible woman you've become." Maya stared at the message for a long time, not sure how to feel. Part of her was angry that he only reached out now when she was famous. But another part of her felt something like closure, like a chapter in her life could finally end properly. The real change came 2 weeks later. The GoFundMe campaign that strangers had started for Maya's family had raised over $500,000. Medical bills that had seemed impossible were suddenly manageable. Carmen could afford the best treatment without Maya having to work 3 jobs. Maya accepted the full scholarship to Juilliard, but she negotiated to defer for 6 months so she could care for her mother through her treatment. The school was happy to accommodate such an exceptional student. She also accepted Antonio Rivera's offer to mentor her, and she began preparing for her debut concert at Carnegie Hall, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks before. But Maya didn't forget where she came from. She worked with Romanos to establish a music scholarship fund for young people from working-class families. The restaurant became famous as the place where the Waitress pianist was discovered, and business boomed. Tony was promoted to assistant manager, and Roberto finally got the recognition he deserved as head chef. Even Maya's old co-workers benefited from the attention the restaurant received. Harrison Blackwood, facing massive public backlash, was forced to step down from several company boards. But under pressure from his own family and advisors, he eventually did something that surprised everyone. He made a genuine public apology and donated $10 million to music education programs in underserved communities. "What I did that night was cruel and inexcusable," he said in a press conference that was almost as widely watched as Maya's original performance. Maya Rodriguez showed grace under pressure and turned my attempt to humiliate her into something beautiful. "I can't undo my actions, but I can try to ensure that other young people have opportunities to develop their talents." Maya watched the apology with mixed feelings. She appreciated the gesture, but she knew it probably wouldn't have happened without the public pressure. Still, if it meant more kids could have music lessons, it was worth something. 6 months later, Maya stood on the stage at Carnegie Hall, looking out at an audience of 2,000 people. Her mother sat in the front row, her hair growing back after successful treatment, tears of pride streaming down her face. As Maya placed her hands on the piano keys, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a scared waitress trying not to spill champagne to a scholarship student at the world's most prestigious music school, performing at one of the most famous concert halls in the world. The first notes filled the hall, and Maya smiled. She was home.